I was tempted to call in sick. As Dana said, I do own MyComm Communications. I started that company about 35 years ago. My background in communications started actually in high school, playing around with CB radios. I joined the Marine Corps, did avionics, did encryption, security, communications. Got out and then I started this company. And so after the holiday fire, a friend of mine that grew up here in the McKenzie area sent me an article from the Reflections newspaper about trying to figure out some form of communications up here because of the loss of cell phones, internet, landlines. And so I called and talked to Ken and said, hey, I'll donate my time. I'll volunteer to help you guys get something put together. And so I've been doing all my technical time and service with the community on a volunteer basis. And so this is a community I grew up in, hunting, fishing, floating the river. My family spends time up here. And so, you know, it's given back to the community as I can with the knowledge I've gained over the years. With that, we sat down and we talked about different areas we could put GMRS radio. We're going to talk about GMRS radio. So I don't know if you've ever ended up in a situation like this. I hope not, but this happened back in 2006 up towards Cougar Reservoir. A couple went Christmas tree hunting. Got stuck in a storm, and had to be rescued. And so the snowcat operator told me that when he got up to him that she got out and got in the snowcat, and the first thing she said was, do you have a gun? And he was like, no, I don't carry a gun. Why? And she wanted to use it on him. She was upset. So anyway, and this is I use this as an example. If they had a radio, they possibly could have got out or been reached earlier or found earlier instead of being out there for 3 days. So anyway. Bart gave me this thing, and I don't know which way I gotta go, but there we go.
By the way, Craig, that happens every year up there. Every year people get stuck at Cougar Hot Springs in the snow.
Yeah. And so I've came across people in the winter when we're going up to work on the radio towers in our little snowcat, and they've been stuck in the snow, but they've been there for hours. And I pulled them out, drug them back down the hill, and then they say, could you give us a ride to the top? I gotta get to work. Anyway, so when the power's out for extended times, your cell phones, and you guys have all experienced this up here. I have out in the Mohawk Valley as well. Went through the 96 flood personally, had water waist deep around my house. And so we've been through this, and the GMRS radios is a system that that the government has set aside for recreational and emergency uses. So this is the definition of it, and so these are not for business use. It's just family, recreational, and emergency uses. And so that's what I want to talk a little bit about today and explain to you how this works and why it's kind of important. When you get licensed, you're basically, it's like getting your driver's license or any other type of license. You're saying you read the rules, you understand the rules, you know what you're supposed to do and what you can and can't do. And basically that's what it is. And like most things, we buy it, we open the box and we start using it. We don't read the instructions. But that's what I want to explain to folks is you need to read the instructions. because there's certain channels for certain things. Just like marine radios, channel 16 is the emergency channel. The old CBs still around, channel 9 was the emergency channel. So everybody's on the same page. And so anyway, the GMRS, I brought some examples up here. There's different handhelds, different powers. And so they have a little bit different features to them. And so we'll talk about those. Does anybody out here have their GMRS license and their radios now? Okay, good number of you. Now, GMRS license, one family member gets a license. It's $35 for 10 years. But it covers, I had it in here, in one of these. It covers all your family members, aunts, uncles, niece, nephew, grandma, grandpa. Covers a wide variety of the family. So not each individual. Unlike a ham license, each individual operator needs a license to operate a ham radio. In GMRS, the one license covers everybody in the family pretty much. There are limitations to the power output. The types of radios. Not all radios that you see on the internet today are FCC type accepted. And what's that mean is that it's gone through rigorous testing to make sure it's not producing adjacent channels or harmonics interfering with other systems. And so, so it needs to be FCC type accepted. These, all these radios here, all these here are just what we refer to as the FRS family. And that's another part. It's a family radio service. They're limited to 2 watts. No license needed to talk on those or use those radios. And those radios can also be used for business use. So they are limited to 2 watts. Some channels are limited to a 1/2 watt. And so that's, once again, if you read your manual, you'll find that out. On the FRS, they'll have a fixed antenna to where you can't remove the antenna off of the radios, a lot of them. So the other thing you'll find is that in 2018, the FCC changed the rules, and that they can no longer sell a GMRS FRS combined radio. So it's either or. Okay? And the other thing they did was they realigned the frequencies so they matched up. So FRS1 is GMRS1. It used to be FRS1 was like GMRS8. And so they realigned it. So if you currently have the FRS radios or the GMRS radios, they may not talk directly with the new ones. So if you're on channel 1 and your neighbor's on channel 1, but one's new, one's old, you'll say my radio don't work. So anyway, I got a conversion chart, and you can get them off the internet too, that shows the lineup. If that's your case, just figure it out, make a note and put it in your box. The other thing, yes?
If, for instance, a lot of us are in the same neighborhood, is there something that you think would be better as a neighborhood to kind of get the same type? Does that matter?
Yes. I say that, and that was our conversation with the group, with McKinsey Group, is that if people buy the same type of radio, and then we get a phone call that says, hey, I can't get my radio to work, and we'll have a better idea of what to do or how to use your radio. Because like right here, I got several different models, and I know how to use the functions in them, but whoever you call might not. They might have the one you have, and it's just easier if everybody has similar radios. And so, in fact, I had somebody the other day called me and says, I can't change channels. It's stuck on this channel. And so I said, well, which model do you have? And they told me, and I said, well, up in the top, does it look like a little key on your display? And they were like, yeah. And I said, your radio's locked, that's why it won't change channels. So then I told them how to do the unlock code on it. Okay. So back to your deal. Yeah, it is kind of important that you and your neighbors, have something similar. Also to learn it. So GMRS, let's jump back over to, well, it pertains to both of these, a lot of what I'm going to talk about here. It's not just for emergencies or snowstorms. We use ours, we float the river. We do a big family float on Father's Day. So we'll use them to talk boat to boat. Say, hey, we're gonna pull over up here, we're gonna hold up here and fish this hole for a while. Every year we go to the mountains and cut Christmas trees. Everybody has a GMRS radio. We communicate that way. You get out of the truck and you go through the woods to look for your tree, take your radio so we can get a hold of you. Traveling. If you like traveling around the U.S., GMRS. I think Bart or somebody, I seen it pulled up here earlier, had a website that lists all the different repeaters around the country, or those who have registered and registered their repeaters. And you can email them and get permission to utilize their system while you're in that state, traveling around the country. So if you're down in hurricane or tornado areas and the one comes through and takes out all the cell sites, your GMRS radio will still work. There again, you might be limited to your distance if you're not on a repeater, but at least you still have a form of communications. There's CERT teams around the country. David McCarthy's here, he's with Springfield CERT team. And they use GMRS radios. Come on in. And so that gives you a chance of reaching out and getting help with somebody versus just sitting there with a dead cell phone. Yes?
Are the FRS radios the kind that are just in shrink wrap packages at Fred Meyer?
A lot of them are, yes. And they're $35 or
Right.
2 for $100 or something like that.
But not the GMRS. You don't find those in...
You don't typically find those in a shrink wrap mobile kit. Midland, I think Midland does make some, and I don't know, Bart, have you any others?
Honestly, I haven't looked at what's out recently. There's a yellow one on the desk there. That was an FRS, GMRS radio that the fire department bought, trying to have some stuff in the past that didn't work out. And they were kind of a shrink wrap product, but that was when they were the combined.
Okay.
What
Yeah,
I've
back.
seen, Craig, is some of the radios that are sold as GMRS radios and the bubble pack type stuff won't be 5-watt radios,
No.
they'll be 2-watt, so
Yeah.
that's the other thing with those.
Yeah, and if they were the older series, they'd only be a half-watt radio.
They sell these now, brand new. It's $100, FRS, GMRS. They
Yeah.
sell the combo because of the antenna stick.
Okay.
Right, so that's gonna be low power only then.
Right, it's super handy, self-charging batteries inside.
Okay. So, yeah, and we'll discuss that a little bit too. So that's the other thing, is the older FRS radios were only a half-a-watt radio. And so there's still a bunch of those floating around. I got 5 or 6 of them actually that I gave to the grandkids to play with. But the newer ones are up to 2 watts now. There's still a handful of channels that are half-watt. I believe it's like channels 8 through 14 or something. They're half-watt, and then the others are 2 watts. GMRS now, they would be a 5 watts on those first 7 channels. And then if you have a mobile radio, you can go up to 50 watts on a mobile radio. So fixed base stations are 15 watts, and those are ones that are just talking base station to base station for communications that way. Repeaters, what they do is they receive your signal from a portable radio up on a hilltop or wherever it's located, boost the power and send it back out on a different frequency. So it comes in on one frequency, goes out on a separate frequency, but the radios are set up to hear it and to talk to it. And those repeaters can go up to 50 watts. So take, for example, I have a GMRS repeater in the Coburg Hills. I can talk to Dana at his house up here at Leeburg from my house in Mohawk. And so I have others, Springfield CERT team, I gave permission to utilize it. There's a dozen other families that use it down there. I've talked from the Corvallis area back to my home in Springfield, and also down below Cottage Grove back to Mohawk. And so it covers quite an area. The one with the McKinsey group is set up here on Death Ball. On that site, the 675 repeater is what I refer to it as. That one covers up here pretty good. I haven't drove tested, but just from people telling me, they've talked from Springfield back up here on that repeater.
It doesn't get a lot of people in Vida.
Doesn't get, I think we have another one for the Vida area, don't we?
I think they're working on it.
We're working on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's, looking at another one down river. But there's also a lot of repeaters other folks have put up in different areas as well.
The repeaters work when the power is out.
Yes, the ones up here are on battery and solar panels.
Okay.
The one I have is on battery and generator. So most of those will be set up that way. We've discussed that because of the power outages. And so most of them will have battery backup. Now, as you travel around the country, I don't know what their setup's going to be. But for the most part, what we're doing out here is, yeah, we want it to be on all the time. So, on the portables, we got any more questions on the GMRS, FRS? On those different?
Craig,
Yes.
just you touched on the website that I had brought up,
Yeah.
and I'll bring it up later, but it's called mygmrs.com. It's a good resource for you. You can research some of these FCC regulations and stuff that Craig's talked about if you're interested in that. It also gives you a link that walks you through step by step to get your GMRS license. Even though there's not necessarily a test or anything with it, the process includes, we'll just say it includes government folks, so it's not exactly streamlined. And so it walks you through that process step by step. So, and then you can also get information about repeaters and people's call signs and things like that. So, mygmrs.com.
Bart,
Yes, sir.
I tried to get back on that site and I couldn't, so I went to the Nerd Stuff computer store. They spent 15 minutes and they finally decided that the site was down and they issued me a phone number.
Okay.
Okay, so at the bottom of the site, there's a phone number and it's about 1/4 of an inch long and very small typing, but there's a phone number to call.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there has been, the FCC site has been down. They've been doing a lot of upgrades recently. On the commercial side of it, as we're filing and paying our fees and stuff like that, they've gone to a two-part authentication. So we've had to go in and redo all of our accounts as well and put in new passwords to meet the new standard. And so we've noticed it's been down as well. So there's just a little bit more information that I kind of went over earlier about the licenses. Talked a little bit about the mobile, the base stations, the repeaters. Range, that's going to vary. 2 to 10 miles. Let's just kind of jump over real quick about, we were asking about how this was going to work up here and stuff, and I'll let Ken get into that a little bit more, and Walt. But the fire department's role is not to manage the GMRS radio network. McKinsey Community Group, MCC, this is getting, GMRS is more about the community and the individuals in the community. It is used, GMRS is used for emergencies and to get the word out and pass along information during emergencies. But it's not the fire department's role to monitor GMRS. Us as individuals in the community, that's our part. GMRS has a limited range, and so a lot of these communities and neighborhoods I've talked to get together, and it's the individuals in the community talking with each other. So in town, it's like this 10-block area, and there's somebody that kind of takes charge of that area. And there's a couple examples. Eugene neighborhood, friendly area neighborhood, and this is on the internet, you can probably pull it up. It's the friendly area neighborhood GMRS communications plan. And they have different channels assigned to different blocks or groups of blocks throughout the area. And they've actually expanded that to most of Eugene now is covered that way, and they have a channel list that this area will work on this channel and this channel, so forth. And that's kind of what the McKinsey group has been trying to put together up here in the valley, is 3 different sections, and then have channels for those sections for people to communicate on. During the ice storm, and I'm sure you've all probably experienced this as well, my kids live down towards the golf course in the Mohawk Valley there, in a little community. So day 2, they go over and check on their neighbor because he's in his 80s, and just see how he's doing. You know? Had no wood for a stove. Had no heat, no electricity, no generator. And so he's like most of them, too proud to ask for help. So my daughter just started making food for him, made some coffee. They just started taking stuff over and said, hey, took over a wheelbarrow full of wood and got him going. And so then they thought, maybe we should walk around the neighborhood and check with all of our neighbors. And so they found 3 more in the same situation. 2 or 3 days they've been in their homes with no heat, no food, no water. And so that's where the radios come in play, is that when you organize these communities and you have these blocks and you're on the same channel, you can check in with your neighbors and check in with each other. And then somebody can make contact with the fire department, or somebody comes down. You guys have this beautiful community center here. This is nice. And I don't know, Bart, is this like an EOC here, or?
Yeah, so this facility, we've been able to transition a little bit with the construction of the logistics center over there.
Okay.
That room, this was originally designed as a combination EOC and a community type facility, but the EOC function can be over there. What this has been in the last, we'll say, this going back to the snowstorm 5 years ago or so, generally we have backup internet, we have running water, we have areas to plug in your battery packs or your phones. So this has become kind of a community hub. And another piece of what you're describing there is getting that information out to folks. Hey, do you remember that they have internet down at the fire station? Oh, perfect. Rather than have to run into town with the ice storm, for instance,
Right.
and try to get an internet connection, this was a resource for that. So
Yeah. And so, but what that takes is community organization for somebody to come down and man the radio to answer calls that might come in for help. Mohawk Fire was sharing with me that during the ice storm, they had 2 calls for service come across on the GMRS radio at the fire station. One ended up being a transport to the hospital. And so that was the only way they could communicate with the fire station, was somebody came across somebody that needed aid. And so cell phones were out in the Marcola area. That cell site went down as well. And so that was the plan, and it worked. And so up here's the same way. It's going to take some work with the community. Ken and Walt have spent a lot of time trying to pull things together. I know David spent the last 4 or 5 years pushing for GMRS in the communities and the neighborhoods. Yes?
Could you give an example of how using the GMRS radio could work in a neighborhood scenario. So I'm thinking about, like, we all have cell phones, right? So I imagine there has to be kind of a framework in which we use that application wisely, right? It's not a cell phone, you're not like having a full-on conversation or like a text, right? So I'm thinking about the various types of technology we have. What is the framework for that radio? Say if you have like a neighborhood set up, or, you know, is everyone kind of privy to that? Do you have to remind people like, hey, this isn't a, you know, how would that work? And especially in an emergency, right? Not everyone's equipped to center themselves and just be clear and
Yeah, good
to
question.
the point.
We've been working on that now for 5 years. Is because you're right. I mean, everybody has cell phones and they're so accustomed to the cell phones. We all had landlines. Few people still have landlines. The GMRS is a supplement to the rest of your preparedness for outages. It's a way to communicate with your neighborhood folks. So today at my home, is my GMRS radio on? No, it's turned off. When do I turn it on? Whenever I know there's going to be a storm coming. Make sure it's all charged up. I got extra batteries. Things are ready. My line of work, I was gone the first 36 hours of the storm. I wasn't around my house. But the generator was running, things were there, the radios were on. It was set up when I left for the family. And so we talked about that a little earlier today. Me and Dana were about being prepared. You know, do you have your stuff in your batteries? Do you have your GMRS radio? Do you have a plan? My family has a plan. We have a designated channel that we go to. That's our main channel. If you can't reach any other way, go to that channel. And that doesn't matter if we're on Highway 58, if we're up 126, it's anywhere we go. If you lose all communications, go to this channel and stay on that channel until we make contact. And if we need to change over to a different channel for whatever reasons, it's too busy or whatever, we'll move over. Yes?
Yeah, I just want to say that, you know, there's more to it than just buying the radio. Part of it's knowing how to use the radio and refreshing your mind on that. So something the McKinsey Group's doing up in the Blue River McKinsey Bridge area is they have a weekly net. And a net is a meeting on the radio with a set time, and people check into the net, practice using their radio and practicing that radio traffic. It works different than a cell phone. You have to know where you can get reception, where you can't, and that only comes with practice. If you're in an emergency situation and you haven't done that practice, it's probably not going to work for you, because things are a lot harder in an actual emergency. So part of that organization structure is coming up with a channel and a time to meet on the air on some sort of cadence, so the folks in your area are used to using the radio.
Go ahead.
Are there standard hailing frequencies or emergency frequencies? You talked about, let's go to this one frequency. Was that agreed upon by your group of people? Or is it a more globally defined hailing frequency?
Yeah. Channel 1, FRS, Channel 1 is. And I think it's 13 on the others.
So they do
there
exist.
is a national, and it's not an FCC requirement, it's just a GMRS community requirement. Back to your question about when do we know when to turn these on, when do we know when to use them? Why not just use the cell phones? Well, in the last ice storm case, the cell tower in the Mohawk Valley was down. There was no cell phones, no landlines. My landline I still have is through Spectrum. Spectrum was down. When the power goes out that feeds the boosters, the amplifiers for Spectrum, they do have limited battery backup capabilities. 30 minutes maybe, sometimes less depending on the size of the amplifiers. And then once that goes down, your internet's down, my landline's down, my telephone, or my TV's down. All forms of communication basically are down, except for my GMRS radio. as I mentioned earlier, you know, the rest of my family, so we all just turn our radios on and we can communicate back and forth and organize stuff. I got a call. I was actually in town and Dad calls me, can't get his generator started. You know, so make my way up Camp Creek to get Dad's generator going. So that's when you have to have your own plan. A lot of ours, we don't leave them on 24/7. It's just turn them on in the morning when you get up. Check in on the hour. You can. I do have a base radio and I do have a battery pack that mine can stay on for about 3-4 days. But I just set it up now that whenever I run my generator for a few hours, it hook a battery charger up, charge the battery up, then I can leave it running. So the community center base station would probably have a generator on it, so it would be on all the time. And that's where you'd have to come up with a rotational shift to have somebody there to answer the calls. In other communities, they've set up different channels for different types of operations. So there's skill sets in every community, whether it's falling trees, running chainsaws, building road. I think cooking's a skill set. Yeah, it's come on in. But anyway, it's organizing those, and as I've shared with Dana and Walt and Ken, that when you organize it, you might have a channel that's just for animal rescue. So you have a team of folks they're familiar with handling livestock and how to deal with the livestock, and so they might go out as a team and do animal rescue operations. You might have another group that's been in the logging industry. They're familiar with fallen trees, taking care of downed trees, clearing roads, and they might be going around opening up the roads. You know, our first responders, we spend a lot of money training them, buying them equipment to provide medical and aid and put out fires and that kind of stuff. But so much of their time they spend during these storms trying to clear the roads to get through the roads. When we as a community have skill sets that we can be out doing that. I think I cleared 4 trees between my house and the store up there, which was like a quarter mile. Yes?
Back to the neighborhood question. There's such a variety of the GMRS. Does it matter what kind, as long as you know the channel that your neighborhood is on? There's such a variety of...
It doesn't, because if their program is set up the same, the frequencies are the same, so you can talk to each other.
Right.
Yeah. So
does it matter what kind you have, as long as you know the channel?
No, so let's just, real quick, let's talk about this radio right here. The reason I got it, it's been replaced with a newer version. This was the first set that I found that would fit my need. Motorola makes it. It's an all-weather radio, GMR FRS radio. It's a 2-watt radio. But there's a free app that Motorola has that you can put on your smartphone. And then you Bluetooth link it to this radio, and you can text back and forth to each other if you want to send text messages. It also has GMRS, GPS capabilities. So if on your smartphone you're linked up and you have Google Earth, this will show you, that app will show you where this radio's at if you're looking for that person. So there's an emergency button right here on the side that you push, and it sends out an emergency location information, and it makes a loud tone, so you're not yelling for help. And so the other thing is it has a built-in little flashlight on the thing that you can use, and it's only to find your bigger flashlight. But I used it going down into my shop when the power was out, because my shop didn't have any lights in it. And so, but it has a dual channel watch, weather alert, so if National Weather Service sends out an alert, it'll alert you on the radio. The other thing is, it was one of the things I was looking for. It has a rechargeable battery, but it also will take 3 AA batteries. It'll run for, I think they claim, up to 26 hours on 3 AA batteries. And so that fit the need I was looking for when I bought these 4 or 5 years ago. So this one doesn't have the Bluetooth capability to do texting and stuff like that, or the app. It doesn't work with the app. But this radio here floats. So this is my river radio. It'll actually float in the water. When it does get wet, it has a strobe beacon on the bottom of it that comes on, and it'll start flashing. So it's easier to locate at night if you happen to lose it in the water at night. Living in the flood zone of Mohawk Valley, this is an important one to have. This was another one I got to try out. This one that doesn't have a AA battery pack option to put AA's in it. Doesn't have the Bluetooth texting capabilities. What it did have was it has FM radio, the capability to listen to FM radio, you can scroll through the FM dial, maybe pick up a local station and get any local information that might be going on during a storm. And so those are some things when you start looking at the radio, will it do what I want it to do, or what's the capabilities of it? And so AA batteries, that's an important function. We use these as well for snowmobiling. And so weatherproof, if you're out in the weather. So those are just some of the features, but there's many others out on the market today. These two here, these are like 2 for $100. This one here is about $100 by itself.
Can you mention the models for the video?
So
The models that you're talking about?
well, these two have now been replaced. I think the T600 you can still get. I think this here is a T800, but I believe Motorola, it's T801 and T802 now.
Okay.
It's the new models on them. And the McKinsey Group has several models over there as well on the table.
Great.
Yeah, it'd be my recommendation that most people talk with McKinsey folks for what radios to get, because if everyone has the same radios, it makes helping each other way easier.
Yes.
Everyone has a different model, they all work different, the buttons are different, the symbols are different. It makes it impossible to help people. So if you guys align with what McKinsey's using, and they've thought about the choices that they've made for those, being from emergency response perspective for folks that don't use radios every day. So potentially aligning with what they have chosen for their radios would be the best benefit for you guys.
Yeah.
Which is what? What did they choose?
It's the motion.
Oh, they'll be,
Yeah.
they're gonna be up, Walt's gonna come up, I think, a little later, and he'll talk about that, and a little bit about the McKinsey Group. Some of you, I have had this radio here for a number of years. It's the Garmin series, UMRS Garmin radio. There again, it has the GPS built into it, so you can track you and your friends if you're on the same channel, have it set up together.
I'll also mention the MCC pamphlet that they have over here that you can pick up on the table has their radio model on the back at the bottom. So if you want to align with what they're using up there, the model number's in the back of the pamphlet.
Yeah. So, yes.
How public is the tracking information? So like if I use a GPS radio and it's beaconing out my location,
Yep.
can anyone find me? Or how easy is it to find me? Both friends and enemies. Well,
Good.
For some people, it's
I'm glad you brought this up, because GMRS radio, let's kind of just talk about this for a second, because it's radio waves, it's going out over the airwaves. It's not encrypted, there is no privacy. So what you say is going out over the airwaves just like a radio station, and anybody can dial it in and hear it, okay? So you want to think about that when you're talking about, especially if it's something with a medical condition of somebody or you know, a combination to your safe and you're giving it to the kids over the airway. Code to the door to get in the house.
Password to your bank account.
Yeah, any of that stuff. Just be mindful of what you are sharing because anybody can listen to it. And the GMRS location, yes, if they dial in on the same frequency, the same tone, it will pop up. It'll just show a marker on their mapping system. So just be mindful of that, but it is a good aid in emergencies for needing help. You can turn that on and off as needed on the radio. But if you are stuck somewhere and you didn't bring your whistle to blow, you're going to be tired of yelling for help and trying to get somebody's attention. And that's where that GMRS, you just activate that and send that out.
I will say those are usually proprietary to the manufacturer. Yeah, so if you want to share your location with someone or a group of people, you have to buy the same radios.
But it is possible for it to be. Did I cover your question?
Yeah, I think my question was more about the cadence, how people would talk to each other, you know, like, and maybe that will get shared when Walt stands up, just kind of like what those check-ins look like so that people are familiar with the technology they're using and it's not a waste of time, right? That the accurate information is making its way through.
Being passed around.
Yeah.
Primarily, you know, keep in mind that this is something that's going to be, depending on the train, the structure you're in, maybe a half mile to a mile, 2 miles radius on most of these. And so that's why it's really a neighborhood type communications network to be in contact with your neighbors. And through the repeater systems, that does cover a larger area. And so keep in mind of that. You want to keep your conversation short and sweet to the point because there might be somebody else waiting to make contact with somebody on there. And so there's some protocols that they'll go over, I'm sure. But keep that in mind that this does go out over the air. So a lot of different people can hear it. And there's a limited number of channels to communicate on. There's 22 channels, I think, altogether.
Yep.
And so,
Let's say repeated.
yeah. And so, and even the repeated channels are actually channels that are used on what we call a simplex radio to radio mode. So you'll hear the people on the repeater talking. Even though you might not be able to talk back across the repeater to them, you'll hear them talking. And so, be mindful of that. And then this is just a little bit about the FRS radios for facilitating individual, family, group, recreation, and business activities. No license is required to use the FRS radios, as we talked about. And this just talks a little bit more about the power outputs and that. And so this information can also be found on the website that Bart mentioned, mygmrs.com. That's a group. I'm not affiliated with them. I am a member of the group. But some guys that started putting this together years ago, and there's a place where you go get good GMRS information on equipment, the operation of it, and once again, you can request to use somebody else's repeater in another state. If you're going down to Moab or Arizona, Scottsdale, or somewhere, there's repeaters all over. Even Southern Oregon, Portland, I think it's the Scioto Fire District has one. They do a check-in up there with their community all the time. There's one down in Florence. The repeater down in Florence covers clear back to West Eugene. There's another one in the Bonita area, Cottage Grove. There's quite a few all over the place. And so there's something there. 35 miles. 35 miles, based on special conditions. So,
Craig, I just wanted to mention, especially with Amazon, but in general, even kids' walkie-talkies. My kids have the little 17 colored plastic walkie-talkies that look cool. They are on the FRS frequencies, right? And so going back to what Craig was saying, and I don't mean to be like conspiracy theory or anything like that, just keep an eye on if your kids, if you have kids and they're using those, that's also audible to everyone else,
Yeah.
right? So whatever's going on, so it's a combination of, there's only so many channels, and if my two boys are out playing on it, they're taking up airspace, but they also say something or give an address, well, next thing you know, it's out there, so.
Yeah.
And the privacy codes don't give you privacy.
No, no, that's a good point. They call them
It's
privacy
misleading.
codes, but it's not really privacy. But the 35 miles, just for an example, we laugh at that when they put that, but when my nephew was in high school, he was still in high school, his buddy drove the KUGN traffic van. You guys remember when that used to run around, give the traffic reports? Well, Junior was up on the South Sister. They did a hike in the Three Sisters Wilderness, and he is up on the South Sister, and he thought just for fun, he would see if he could reach his buddy in the KUGN traffic van. So he called out to him on the radio. Sure enough, he answered him. He was on Beltline by Delta. So, sitting on the side of the Three Sisters, South Sister, he was able to talk with his little radio clear down into Eugene. So, like Bart was saying, you know, you don't know who's out there, who's listening, but it does travel. And so keep that in mind. These are just the two radios that I have that I keep. This is one of the Midlands. Some of the McKinsey group, is it Steve has a Midland? Do you have a Midland, Walt?
No, I do not.
Okay, I think Steve has a Midland. That was the first one I actually took it and put it on the bench down at the shop and tested it, and it checked out really good. I was really surprised at the receiver sensitivity on it and the performance of it. And so those are available as well if you want something to mount in your vehicle. This is the channel plan. You were asking earlier about the official calling channel or unofficial calling channel. So up on the top there in red, FRS channel 1, used to be GMRS 9, that's what it was. And then down channel 20, and then on repeaters, it's the 675 repeater with a PL code or a privacy code of 141.3. And so, we'll go back to your question earlier about how do we know when to turn these on or when to use them. The 675 repeater that we placed up the McKinsey here, and we did it because we did it first because that was the purpose of it, was for emergencies, because the cell phone's going out and people trying to get help. It has the code of 141.3 in there. It also has a code of 100. So that code of 100 is for the general public to use for day-to-day communications. And then if you were to have an emergency or need help, you'd switch over and use the code 141.3. And people are like, well, why would you do that? To give the people that monitor for emergencies a break of listening to all the traffic that might be going on, and only to listen for that emergency traffic of somebody needing assistance. What'll happen, and what does happen, is if it's really busy activity and it's not intended for you, you have a tendency to reach over and turn the volume down. Then you get busy doing other things, and then when that call for help comes in or assistance, you don't hear it because you turn the volume down. So by utilizing the code 141.3, you can leave your volume up and not hear all that other chatter. And so that's why we set up the two separate codes. The little radios I was talking about have the dual function. That way I can monitor channel 20 with 141.3, but I can still use our regular channel to talk on. And if a call comes in, it'll jump over and I'll hear that call on channel 20. So anyway, we're setting up, the other repeaters will be set up in similar fashion throughout the valley. So, okay, is there any other questions? Yes, sir.
So if I'm understanding you right, these channels is kind of like a party line on the phone where there'd be multiple voices talking over each other and you're just trying to pick out your person, and is the volume different depending on where they're at, or?
No, that's where
It's just a mess.
it's, the party line's right. Party line's correct, yeah. I can remember, Route 3, Box 342, Camp Creek Road, party line. There's 3 of us on this line. So that's where these PL tones come into play. There's a couple hundred PL tones, the privacy codes he was referred to. So let's say you're on channel 2. You might use privacy code 67, they might use privacy code 79 or 82.5. You won't hear their call come through on your radio if you have a different privacy code. So if you delete your privacy code, you'll hear all calls, all traffic that's on that channel come through, okay? It's kind of like a monitor.
Selective mute.
Selective mute, there you go.
Filter.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I say, you know, my family, we have a designated channel and stuff, and that's to help to eliminate all that stuff. You brought up another.
We say designated channel, you mean a channel and a code.
Correct, correct. So when you say a party line, just people talking over each other, no, that's what you have to refrain from, is to allow somebody to finish their conversation before you start talking. Because it's push to talk, let up to listen. It's not full duplex like a cell phone or a regular landline phone. It's just one way, simplex, one way.
And you're only gonna hear one person at a time. You're gonna hear the strongest station.
Strongest signal. If they're
Yeah.
close, it's gonna get you this heterodyning garbage that you're gonna hear, and you won't understand either one of them. And so that's something else to keep in mind. That's why I said it. Go through, read the rule book, read the regulations, get familiar with your equipment, and use it on a regular basis. Like, if you're traveling, we use ours quite a bit when we travel with friends. We don't use a CB a whole lot anymore. They're still out there, but these are just more convenient because when we get out of the RV, we can walk away and take it with us. And, you know, I was checking in, they wanted my license plate number. Well, am I gonna run all the way back out there? I just grab my radio and say, hey, read me a license plate number, would you? Just write it down. So there's lots of things you can do with it. If you have property and you're out working by yourself in the back of the property, well, leave one at the house and you can have one out on the property if you need assistance or something. So there's many things. Probably used up more time than Dana allowed me, so it's just kind of easy.
There's a couple questions here for you.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
Do any of these radios have a search or scan feature?
Yes, they do. Most of them
Okay,
do.
what about if you've got a scanner in the house that listens to lots of other frequencies? Are these frequencies sometimes available in scanners?
Can you program your scanner?
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, any commercial scanner can receive these frequencies.
That's actually the construction of the tower up McKenzie here, where the other side is, Death Ball. These are just some of the other tower locations. So I guess we're going to turn it over to McKenzie.
If you're finished.